talked about MSA system in general, but we actually want to talk to the commercial users of the MSA program. So joining up here on stage, we now have Payne, who's with the MSA team and works in this end user sector, so anything post-processor every single day. With him, we've got Chef Stiefel, who is the Corporate Executive Chef of P&O Cruises Australia, and Jasmin Green, who's joined us from Teys Australia, based down in Wagga in the Livestock Strategic Operations area. So we're pretty excited to talk a bit about how does MSA or eating quality get used in these businesses, so you really get some commercial insights into how the program works. So Kelly, let's get started, right? So what are we going to do? You've got some chopping boards there. I saw you walk up with a tray of something.
Yeah, so hopefully we can get up to it. Well, so good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you, Sarah. Welcome, Chef Uwe. Welcome, Jasmin. We've got some work to do. So I've got a rump here, and we've done the rump a million times, right, Sarah? But I think there's some opportunities in there that we need to explore, and I think Chef Uwe and I are going to have some chats about that along the way, about some value opportunities within that. I'll get to work. I need to get to work. Okay,
it's a big piece of meat. How much would that be as a carcass?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a giant piece of meat. So we're looking at 3.8% of the carcass, and I think some of the opportunities around this, Sarah, is that we often overlook the fact that the tenderloin is 1.7% of the carcass, the cube roll is about 2.7% of the carcass. So we've got a big piece of meat here. There's normally there might be 6 muscles in here, but we might find 5 or 6, but there's normally 6 muscles in here. And I guess the value proposition here for everyone, or for us at the end user end, right, Chef Uwe, that we've got some cut by cook combinations out of there according to the consumers. We can investigate those and look at the value proposition for those.
Awesome. Okay. Well, stop talking. Get cutting.
Get working.
All right. So we're going to go to Jasmin now, because I just want to get Jasmin and Chef to give you an intro to their businesses. So I guess, Jasmin, could you just give us a bit of an overview of Teys, and I guess where does the MSA program sit in the Teys business?
Yep. Thank you very much, Sarah, and it's really great to be here today at Red Meat 2019. So Teys Australia operates 6 processing plants across Australia. So we've got a couple of plants in Queensland, a plant in South Australia, and we've also got some plants here in New South Wales as well. And last year, across all of those plants, we actually processed over 1.2 million head of cattle through the MSA grading system through that program. And I guess when you look at all those different regions, we've obviously got a number of different cattle types across those different regions. So we get a lot of variation in the type of cattle that come through our plants. So the beauty of the MSA program is it actually allows us to underpin our brands with an eating quality guarantee, so we can provide that consistency for our customer. So if we take for example, our Grasslands Premium. If you buy a Grasslands Premium strip loin or rump, it doesn't matter whether it comes from our Billawheeler plant or our Narracourt plant, we can guarantee that customer they're going to get the same eating experience every time, which is really important to make sure we get that repeat purchase of that product.
That's really interesting, Jasmin. So when we look at MSA, I guess that it's interesting that you can use that across to assist with your brands. And so we're not only looking at different animal types, you're looking at different abattoirs across the country, different feeding regimes and that sort of thing. So it standardises, very interesting that it standardises how you can manage those brands within your business. And so Chef Uwe, we've spent, ladies and gentlemen, we've spent some time together, some quality time together recently. I've known Chef Uwe a fair while, but Chef Sam Burke in the front row, Chef Sammy and Uwe and I spent some time on a ship. Now you might think it's just Sarah, and it took some convincing to let Sarah let me on the boat, on the ship I should say. Anyway, and so you think it's all pina coladas and it's sitting around by the pool.
That's what I thought,
yeah. But anyway, let me tell you, this is the closest thing to a human Terminator I've ever seen. It does not stop. We're in the galley, and you know, as producers, it's never seeing daylight. We didn't see daylight. It was 13 hours a day in the galley, but it was great fun, Chef. So tell us a bit about your business.
Absolutely. A wonderful good morning, everyone. Great pleasure to be here. We at P&O Cruises, operating at this point of time 3 fairly large-sized cruise ships sailing out of Brisbane and Sydney, carrying about 9,000 guests and 2,500 crew, and all these people, of course, got to be fed each and every single day of a year, and that comes down to about 16 million meals served every single year on our 3 ships. Number 4 is in the works, and we have it coming up next year. That's another 3,500 guests, another 1,200 crew, so our volume only gonna increase. What we're offering on the ship where Sam and Kelly have been sailing with myself just recently, it's a variety of 22 different restaurants and food outlets, and on those 3 days we were on board, we went through about 2.5 tons of beef and just under a ton of lamb, serving it to our guests and crew in all these restaurants and food outlets.
Excellent, Chef. So just while we're on meat, let's just stick on meat. So what are some of the things that you would consider, because we're about to break this wrap up and we'll talk about that a bit later, but what are some of the things you would consider when we're thinking about proteins on menu, on board?
What's absolutely important is not only to have the right quantity across the entire year, but also having the right quality and consistency throughout the entire year. And having a host of different cuts and proteins which we can multi-use in each and single one of the outlets. Doesn't matter if it's an Italian restaurant, an Asian restaurant, if it's our casual pantry outlet, even if it's the mess room. We've got to be able to use literally the very same cut in each and single one of them, just for different preparations and dishes.
Yeah, excellent. And I need to get back to work, Sarah, and I'll stop talking. But so I think we'll investigate. So let's investigate as we go on, because you're going to do a dish for us as well in a little bit. So Sarah, we need to investigate how MSA fits into this, the cut by cook combinations, etc., and the value opportunities in here. So I'll get to
All
work.
right, well, you pull it to pieces.
Okay.
Because Jasmin and I are just going to have a bit of a chat, just following on from, guess what we're hearing P&O wanting from product and what their customers are looking for. From a Teys perspective, what are where are your customers and what are they asking about these days about your brands?
Yep, thanks, Sarah. It's a really good question. So across our business, all of our export plants are export accredited, so we export to about 60 different countries around the world. We've got a suite of 4 major brands, and the main thing behind all of those is they're all actually underpinned by that guarantee of eating quality through the MSA system. So each of those brands is unique and brings its own story. So for example, our Grasslands brand really ties into those consumers that are looking for that natural option, with it being from our Grasslands accredited producers, so a grass-fed only product, HCP-free, antibiotic-free. We've definitely got a lot more people asking for those types of products. So we've seen a real increase in that market, particularly into the North American market, an increase in demand for that sort of product. And another example is our 36 Degrees South brand out of our Narracourt plant. Really tells that provenance story of South Australia and that real food story there. So we've got a lot of producers, a lot of consumers also looking to be able to really appreciate that message that comes through with that product. So I guess the real key thing for us is it's actually underpinning all of those brands with that eating quality guarantee. So whichever story that they like the sound of to go with their meal for that day, they've got an eating quality experience that's going to meet their expectations, which is really important. The other part of that too is we're actually in some markets now also using the EQG, or the eating quality graded cipher, to be able to actually sell that product in the marketplace based on that eating quality outcome, as opposed to just dentition, which was traditionally how meat was marketed and sold around the world. So I think that's a really positive step that the MSA guys have brought through for us.
Yeah, and we're really seeing that EQG cipher across various users of it in the Australian market. We're seeing in the US, the China market, Japan, Korea. So it's really getting some traction. What you're seeing here, Jasmin, just on the subprimaling that Kelly's doing, is that something that Teys is a big processor? Are you taking products down to this level?
Definitely, most certainly are, and it's pretty common for a lot of plants these days to actually break down these big primals, such as like your brisket or your blade, down into your smaller subprimals. Carcass utilisation is really important to any beef processing business, so we want to make sure we can maximise the amount of value and utilisation. The other, I guess, opportunity we have as processors in Australia is we have access to a lot of different markets around the world, and a lot of those markets have different tastes, or different cultures have different cook methods which utilise different parts of the carcass. So you go to a market like China, for example, they're actually they really like using those shank products in some of their cook methods, which you traditionally don't see much in the Australian domestic market.
Great, and just linking, I guess when I was talking earlier, I was saying that when the whole supply chain talks to each other, we can really get some change happening. You're in a livestock operations role, so how do you take that type of message through to producers for Teys?
Definitely, and I think that's a really important point to make, is that we're all in this industry together. So for anyone who sells direct to any of our Teys plants, they actually get a really comprehensive set of carcass information on an individual animal level. And what we hope that producers are able to do with that information is understand what the different factors are on farm that they can tweak and manipulate to help produce a better eating quality outcome, so we can get the right product in the right box and help meet those expectations of our consumers. So we also do quite a lot of producer engagement work as well. So we run a series of workshops. We've actually also started doing a lot of webinars as well, because we're finding that technology enables people, they don't have to necessarily get off the farm. They can get those resources in their own time. The other part around that carcass feedback information is all of that, all of those 1.2 million head of animals, all that information actually is sent through to the MSA system. So they can actually go onto My MSA and look at all their carcass information, and it actually allows them to benchmark against their own region, so they can really see where the opportunities are for them to potentially lift their performance in their region.
And thanks for the plug, Jasmin, because I guess what I'm holding up here, and you need to get your hands on today before you leave, or before you leave Tamworth this week, is at the showcase stand. What we've done with that feedback that goes into the My MSA system, you can actually go and do benchmarking online, but we've turned that benchmarking into an actual paper version too. So this has just been released, the Beef Eating Quality Insights Report, so where you can actually start to see how you're performing against other parts of the country and other cattle types. So thanks for the plug there, Jasmin. How you going there, Kelly?
Yeah, I'm done, Sarah. Well, how's that for timing? Did we practice this earlier?
Yeah. No.
Perhaps. Anyway, so yeah, we are. So Chef Uwe, we're now looking like we've got a rump here into a whole bunch of meal solutions, haven't we? So
absolutely.
and we need to tell everybody. So what have we got here? So that's a little bit special, that one there. So
see it under the camera?
everyone can see, yeah. So you may not be able to see the tags. Anyway, so here we have the eye rump side here, Sarah. Mm-hmm. And interesting, and then the eye rump centre. So they're both the gluteus medius, but the consumer that we, through blind taste testing, actually gave us a different eating quality outcome for all of these. And they actually perform a lot across a lot of cook methods. And I hope, Sarah, that I don't steal your thunder, but we actually, like any good presenter, we actually did something we did earlier. We have a presentation out the back in the supermarket of the future, don't we?
Yeah, correct. We've turned these things into retail, what they might look in a retail.
Absolutely. So, Chef, so when you look at this suite of cuts, how do you think this sort of thing would fit into your business in relation to these cuts?
It would fit extremely well, because it literally is one cut broken down in different subcuts, and each and every single one can be used for a multitude of purposes across the entire restaurant chain on board Pacific Explorer, for example, whether it's our main restaurant, waterfront restaurant, whether it's the Italian Angelo's, or it's the pantry, the casual outlet, which has a multitude of different outlets, like the carvery, sticks, the Asian counter, the curry house for the Indian specialties, or even Mexican food.
Yeah, so and when we're on board, Chef, there's a lot of, and I guess this is for everyone as well as ourselves, that we couldn't quite believe the variety, Sarah, of eating quality experiences. And so the MSA model allows us to have those acute conversations, isn't it? So when we're in the bowels of the shift and we're cutting off, because people may not realise, Sarah, is that Chef Uwe has a full butchery brigade. So this can be done on board at sea, and a full chef's brigade.
Yes.
So applying, and you touched on it, so applying cook methods or the MSA outcomes and cook methods to your restaurants. We can just talk about that a little bit as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Well, why don't we get Chef to maybe start plating up some of those? Because what you just touched on about the different cuts perform differently. So 3.5 million cattle graded last year. They're not all peas in a pod, so every rump's quite different. So I thought I might just, while Chef starts plating up one of these meals, is talk to Jasmin a bit about, let's go back to what cattle types produce what type of eating quality. So let's pick out an animal that would be average for New South Wales.
Yep.
If we think about the MSA index range,
Yep.
What types of cattle do you think?
So traditionally what we sort of see across our Wagga and Tamworth plants as an example would be a British bred cross. You're probably looking around a carcass weight of about 300 kilos, say a hump height of 65. millimetres, probably an ossification about 170 if it's got no HGP. Probably looking around a marble score around 300.
Right. Okay, so if we take those measurements, so every animal gets about 14 measurements taken off it, and we predict an eating quality score out of 100 for every single muscle in a carcass. And if we just use these ones, Kelly, that you've pulled out here, so for that animal there, this rump flap would actually be 67 points out of 100 if you thin sliced it into like a yakiniku, a shabu-shabu style. If we took this eye rump centre and cut it up into stir fries, which I heard would be helpful for the ship, 59 points out of 100. This would be a nice roast, almost a 4-star roast at 63. And a rump cap, lots of cooking options here, but actually it's a 4-star if you thin slice it.
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. And I guess some of the stuff, and we haven't got time today, but Chef Uwe, what we're looking at, one of the new experiences that we're looking at through modern cooking. So everyone's aware of the combination ovens, these atmospheric ovens and stuff, these really smart ovens that we use. That Chef, we're looking at perhaps doing a bit of a roast on some of these cuts and then grill finishing them. So having a little bit of using consumer sensory to the nth degree to see if we can get. And I think the model tells us about an 8% increase in eating quality if we do that. So yeah,
pick the right fitness for purpose, right?
You bet.
So if we think about your product going to the US, Jasmin, and maybe the product might be sitting on the ship for a month in its vacuum packaging, what the MSA model also does, it actually predicts if the eating quality gets better over time. So we could actually, with that rump, if we age it for 35 days, let's say, we could actually turn most of these things into 4-star cuts. This rump cap, every way that you choose to cook it will be a 4-star experience. If we took that animal Jasmin explained and aged the meat, this eye rump side has lots of 4-star options and good solid 3-star options across a lot of cooking methods as well.
Definitely. The other part of that too is we've definitely got that aging ability to be able to age that product, and we put it on a ship or stick it in these guys when they go on those long trips. It allows us to take advantage of that aging process. The other way we could actually, if we didn't have time to age it, so with the 5 days aging, we could actually change some of our carcass attributes and actually still get that higher eating quality score by changing some of those carcass attributes. So say if we wanted to only give it a 5 days aging, we'd probably have to manipulate some of those. If we say we increase our marbling a little bit, we reduce our ossification maybe down to about a 140, and increase that carcass weight as well, we'd actually probably be able to lift that animal up to what we see around like a top 5% of the MSA index, which would be about a 63.
Yeah, right. So top 5% of the index, you can get that information in this book as well, is a 63 for this year, for the year just gone. The other animal you described, that's about a 58, isn't it? The average New South Wales animal's producing about a 58 MSA index right now. So should we explain what's happening on the plate there, Kelly?
Yeah, in 2 seconds, because this is very relevant. I know we haven't got a lot of time, but really quickly, Chef Uwe, the other day, we had our meeting the other day, and if you can see, anyway, you can see it on the camera, but see that, it's kind of like, it's off the bottom of the rump, and for years it's gone into trim meat, Sarah. Anyway, Chef, didn't we? We had when we had our catch up the other day before we went on board. Mm-hmm. You turned up with these, right?
Yes.
Didn't you? And so anyway, the guys that supply P&O and Chef Uwe, they said because these get cut off the bottom of the rump to make portions out of the centre of the rump, etc. Anyway, story for another day. But they have these left over. They said, we've got a couple of thousand of these a month that we need to find homes for. So. You know when you have those things, that list of things before you leave this earth? Yep. Yep, that's one of mine. It's gone. It's now found a home for that, so very exciting. Anyway, so go. You're up, Chef. You're up. What are you up to there?
Yeah, what we got over here is a Vietnamese beef salad, obviously utilizing the rump, or one of the subcuts of it. And we slow cooked it actually overnight, put it in the oven at 65 and cooked it down to 58. Very, very slowly, and chilled it down, carved it up, and we made a nice little noodle salad with it, with glass noodles. Absolutely.
Plate that up for me.
With a couple of glass noodles, some rice vegetables, and a spicy dressing, topped with a couple of peanuts, and that's actually one of the dishes we served at a time on board Pacific Explorer and keep serving it, and it's very, very popular.
Yeah, so there we go. We'll send that out into the crowd, Chef. That's look at that, beautifully medium rare, out of the combi oven. Or upside, look at that.
So for a Vietnamese beef salad, it doesn't have to be a Scotch fillet or a beef tenderloin. A simple secondary cut will do just exactly the same, and it's perhaps even better.
We're not allowed to say anything, but is there money in that? Like, wow, excellent.
Well, what else have you got, Kelly? Because we just started to touch on, thank you for the nice segue, Chef, because talking about let's get value out of big pieces of meat out of the carcass that are not, let's not think about tenderloins and cube rolls in this demonstration. Got anything else in your
Yeah, didn't we get up to some issues, Chef, on the ship? So briskets, ladies and gentlemen, they're really popular. I just quite quickly wanted to ask Jasmin, before we get into our little brisket story, but tell us about, it's super popular, right? So tell us about Teys and the non-loin cuts, we're going to call them today, aren't they? So talk us through that, how you're going with those.
Definitely. So as we mentioned before, carcass utilisation is really important, so we want to make sure we can find a home for every single cut. So brisket is one of those that will break down normally into your point-end brisket and your navel-end brisket, and they might go into different markets, but traditionally brisket has always gone into an Asian market. So the sort of China and Japan are using it in a lot of their hot pots or beef bowls is sort of the type of way they'll use it. We're actually now also seeing a bigger demand coming out of particularly the US market for more of that barbecue style, so we're seeing that change in cook method, more of that long and slow, so which is a great way to be able to utilise a cut like that and really advance the eating quality attributes that cut can offer.
And Sarah, so back to you. So because people may not realise that it's evolving, the MSA thing never stops, right? And that's what we love about it. So there's been some crazy research around brisket with not only Australians, but our friends in the US. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting because last year we took some briskets and we took them from a whole range of quality cattle quality types, through from Rockhampton through to Wagga, and we actually kept half of the briskets here, sent the other half over to the United States, to Texas, home of slow cooking of briskets, right? So we've taken, what we were trying to find is how do these briskets perform firstly if you put them under protocols like smoking and low and slow, pulled brisket, chopped brisket, any way you can eat brisket. And then what we actually found, and see how Australian and US consumers vary, and consumers all around the world, actually doesn't matter where they live or if they're rich or poor, they actually all think pretty much the same thing about eating quality. However, what came out, the difference between a brisket off the highest quality animal to the lowest was 70 points out of 100. So that's the points I was talking about on the rump. 70 points, Kelly. That's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a big number.
It's a big number. And then if you took the same brisket, pulled it, chopped it, sliced it, that actually made a difference. And there was actually about a 15-point difference between those cooking methods as well. So this is when we talk about let's find the right fitness for purpose and extract the greatest value out of those cuts. But you used the brisket on board, didn't you?
Oh, wow, yeah. So, Chef, I'm not going to steal your thunder, but one sitting, 30% of the ship ate that meal.
Yes.
So 30% of 2,400 guests found that meal all on their own. We didn't tell them and ate it. So talk us through that stuff.
We obviously tried a couple of various dishes. We done Texan-style brisket, we done Mexican-style, we done Hawaiian-style brisket, a Hungarian-style brisket, all various different preparations, and slow cooked it overnight and served it then the next day for lunch and dinner on the various menus, but especially up in the pantry. And it had an incredible uptake. People just loved it for the tenderness, for the quality of it, and even more so for the flavor. So it was a very different cooking technique to the very traditional roasting, and we had a massive impact and great feedback from our guests. And this is exactly what we want, that whatever we are serving on board appears to all different crowds we're catering to, and that everyone likes it in the end.
Yeah, and if we can, I feel a little proud, but 100% of the dishes that we all of us as a group elected to take on board, you've adopted, I think, Chef.
Yes, all these dishes have been on these menus now since. We've done a lot of work obviously with brisket, with rump, but also beef cheeks, and the feedback is just incredible.
Yeah, a lamb in there. We did a slow cooked lamb as well.
Not only beef, but also lamb. We've done some work with lamb shoulder and lamb leg. and the dishes are here to stay, that for sure.
Awesome. Thank
Great
you, Chef.
news.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're running out of time, Kelly. So any last messages for us, Chef, as producers or brand owners of red meat? What are the messages, one message from you on what do we need to do to make sure that red meat stays on your menu?
As I already mentioned, what we obviously would like to have is that consistency and high quality which we will be able to serve to our guests throughout the entire year. And we at P&O are especially proud of it. We are the only cruise line operating in Australia doing local purchasing or purchasing food 100% out of Australia from local vendors.
Yeah, good on you, Chef.
Something we definitely would like to keep for years to come. There's no question asked.
That's good.
Fantastic. Okay, so that really takes us to the end of this session, and to provide that whole loop from where Hamish is starting right at conception of with genetics, and we've taken it right through to consumption. I know that sounds cliche, but we have really taken it right through to that point now, thinking about someone on a cruise ship. Now, I've got a couple of minutes for questions, and while we get the roving mic, I'm going to answer that Victorian question that came up before.
Well done.
And you're right, because Victoria actually has the lowest adoption of MSA as proportion of that state slaughter. Where we think that's majorly coming from is traditionally a really strong sale yard state for selling finished cattle. And whilst that might be changing, we've seen that that's probably been where that adoption rate why it is low, is we have a sale yard pathway for MSA, but sometimes it may not work depending on times and what have you. But we only see that as an opportunity to spend more time in Victoria and work with all the processors there to get them to see the value that MSA might unlock for them. So if we've got any other questions, we've got a few minutes before lunch, which I think sounds pretty exciting. Yeah, we've got John.
Mr. Condon.
Thanks, John.
John Condon from Beef Central. Sarah, I was going to ask the same question about Victoria, so thanks for tidying that up. My question is, MSA's, the R&D side has done a lot of fantastic work over the last 20 years with ironing out some of the mysteries around eating quality and consistency of eating quality. I'm wondering, as time progresses, is it harder to get the same bang for our buck out of R&D that we did from the big ticket items that we were able to nail earlier in MSA's evolution? I mean, are we going to get to a point where we literally run out of steam in terms of getting value for money out of MSA R&D?
Well, I guess when I look at record numbers of cattle coming through, it's a funny phenomenon that you would think you get more and more adoption, so you get sort of more market saturation, so therefore price differentials would erode. It's actually not the case. The price differentials actually keep there, and even in conditions where cattle prices are almost as high as they've been, the price differential has still stayed there, which I think to me is where we've got brand owners who are getting more sophisticated in the way they're using MSA. The actual signals going back down to farm will become more about not just are you MSA compliant or not, but are you actually hitting those quality marks. So I think there's lots of actual work for us to do on farm, thinking about how do we have on-farm technologies that could predict 2 weeks out, through a month out, to predict whether something has a chance it's going to be a dark cutter, because no one wants that, no one wins with that. So I think there is still lots of work there to do. We haven't really even touched the surface on, we know tenderness, juiciness, flavour, but consumers are shifting a bit now to tell us that flavour is starting to increase in their importance. So we don't really understand what is it they do or don't like about flavour. So about to enter into that space as well. So John, I can't see that there is actually an end to it. And as we increase adoption, I just think we'll just keep seeing that value keep being returned. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah, we've got one in the middle, Kathleen.
Question for you, Jessica. I'm Rodney Neal. Jessica, as a producer, we like to squeeze every cow we can into the MSA spot, and we can pass on the MSA with some with most cattle, but some of them come back and says it doesn't meet company specs. And why is that? Is the MSA thing not quite good enough there, or not?
It's a really good question, and we definitely get that one quite a lot. So we have a number of customers, obviously, that we work with, and they actually also have, so we've got our grid specifications. A lot of those are actually based on our customer requirements because they have a set of specifications for us. So, and a lot of those are around summer. So MSA covers the eating quality attributes to make sure that it can guarantee that eating experience. But what we're trying to meet is actually make sure we meet that customer's requirements. So when they're displaying that product in their retail shelf or sending it through to their restaurant, to the restaurant end, they're actually providing exactly the type of product that customer's asked for. So down to, are we sending 12 mils of fat on our strip loins? So different countries will have different requirements, different customers will have different requirements. So that's why we sort of keep those in there to make sure that we're actually making sure that we can meet our customers' requirements at the other end. So most companies will have slightly different ones, so it's definitely worth making sure you have a really good understanding of the grid and have a good relationship with your buyer. Because if you do have any questions or want to understand the differences in that, have that conversation with them so you can make sure that you're going to be able to get as much value as you can because you're going to meet those grid specifications. So most of them will have normally a fat requirement and a carcass weight requirement just as a base one, and then we'll put the eating quality stuff on top of that. So hopefully that helps answer your question.